Welcome to the Choices That Made Us podcast, where we see how people became who they wanted to be. My name's Andrew Hooper, and today we have Hunter Clark. Welcome, Hunter. Most important question of the day is, what did you have for lunch today?
Well, hello, Andrew, and today I had a grilled cheese accompanied by a tomato soup.
Interesting. Well, what do you do for work, and how did you decide upon that?
So, I currently work at a farm on Thermont, and it ain't really like a full-time job, and I don't plan on like going anywhere with it, but I chose it because I have one of my hobbies is to do competition shooting sports. And at that farm, they have a range there. So mainly when I work there, we set up stages and we build walls, but it's actually still a functioning farm. So they have me doing like inventory and moving stuff just like normal. So that's kind of just how I got put into that job. I hope to move from that. I don't really plan on sticking around with that for too long. It's just something to pay for car insurance and stuff like that.
So you're in school right now. What grade are you in, and what are you doing?
I am a senior, and yeah, I'm finishing up final year. Um, After that, I got like 3 months to myself, and then I'm off to basic training in Georgia.
For what branch?
I'm going to the Army. Fort Moore is down there, and I'm taking an option 40 contract. So that means I'll go through infantry school. I'll go through basic AIT after infantry school, and I'll be going through airborne school, and afterwards I'll be going through RASP. And RASP is just kind of like ranger selection. So we'll see how it goes from there.
So what's been your biggest life decision, and how'd you make that decision? What was so hard about it?
So yeah, I think it's just signing that contract to the army. I think that was just a big decision because that's a big commitment. I'm saying goodbye to my family for a good portion of time. I'm saying goodbye to my friends for a good portion of time. That's like that was a big deal for me, and I really had to think about what I wanted to do for my future and how I'm able to get there and what doors I can open, and I had to make those sacrifices. And that was big on me. So that was one of my biggest decisions.
So, what what has been your biggest life lesson, and who was it from?
I guess um, my dad is probably my biggest coach. I wouldn't say mentor because, I mean, truth be told, you know how it is. Like you don't seek out your dad's guidance, but usually it's the most helpful guidance you have in your entire life. So he's always there for me, even when I don't want him to be, and he gives me some of the biggest lessons I need to hear, whether I agree with them at the time or not. And some of them are, take things slowly. You don't need to be head rushed into everything. All right, trust your gut. Don't overthink everything. Um, yeah, a lot of these things he told to me, and I ignored and then learned the hard way, and just found out how right he was. Like you should take things slowly. You shouldn't head rush into everything. You shouldn't overthink everything because there's more to life. You can't just think about where you're going. You got to think about the journey it takes to get there, right? And I mean, like a perfect example of this is I'm also a big time wrestler. I say big time. I'm not ranked in any means, but I wrestle for our school and I'm on varsity and all that stuff. And I remember being in a tournament, and one of the big spots, it was a bracketed tournament, so it wasn't a team effort. And I had 3 matches that day. Now I lost my first match. The second match was against a kid who also lost. So I was thinking, all right, I'm gonna beat this kid and get to my third match. And I was just thinking about that third match. I was thinking about that third match. That's how I could get to third place on the bracket. And I thought so hard on how I'm gonna do on that third match. By the time the second match came, I got completely wiped out because I didn't know what I was doing. I was only thinking about the step ahead. I was thinking about the last step or where I'm going to be, what my goal is. I believed that so hard, and I had all that confidence, except I didn't think about the steps it took to get there, and that's where I faulted at. So I think that's probably the biggest lesson that I learned, and I'm glad I learned it young, so I don't learn that lesson when I'm in my adulthood. I don't have a mentor to look over me or to guide me through.
What we talked about you going into the army and signing that contract. What finally made you pull that trigger to sign that contract?
Well, um, I'd like to say my dad, but that would be completely false. I mean, I kind of did it without him even knowing. I was like, we're trying to figure out, okay, what am I going to do after school? I want to go to college, but that's not immediate after high school. I was looking at options and was like, okay, well, I once again I do competition shooting. I might as well throw my hat in the ring in an armed force. Um, so yeah, that was probably one of the biggest things that called me over. I mean, also I wanted to go to college, and I know there's a lot of benefits in the army. Mainly, what the army offers me, and this isn't a recruiting podcast by any chance, or by any means, but I think what really called me over is that all of the doors the army opens. Really, it's not only I took a 3-year contract, which I can always re-sign, but that also gives me a slight back door, just in case things don't work out the way I want to. They'll pay for a lot of college classes for me. Even if I just want to go full college life, I can always end my 3-year contract and just they'll give me the GI contract. I can go straight to college. That's not what I want to do. I could also go and take my classes while in the army. I could also go through West Point. There's so many options. And if I don't want to take my med degree like I'm planning on doing, I could always back out. There's trade schools I can go to. I could pick up one of those. I could do a new MOS in like welding, like working on Humvees or working on helicopters. All that stuff is in my reach or is in my grasp. I just need to re-sign that contract. So I mean, I have a lot of open doors, and that's really what pulled me into the army instead of kind of locking myself into a singular college where I'm stuck with the degree I have and I have to do all this work by this time. I think I just needed that freedom and choice in my life. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Um, One thing that I would say is super important in life is people. I know you surround yourself with at least one great person, but what do you specifically look for in people and in friends?
All right. Well, that's kind of an open-ended question. I mean, I do like to have a multitude of friends. I like to make a lot of friends, but some of my friends are closer. So I guess when I'm out there making friends, like normally, um, I just look for someone I could bounce off of. I mean, I usually step out there and find someone that I could talk to, like go on Instagram, then just talk to an Eastern Tech guy randomly. Then next thing I know, I'm exploring an abandoned building with him. So, I mean, those are like small friends, but I think the closer friends I kind of find on accident. I mean, if I'm talking about you right now because you're sitting across from me, I mean, we kind of just were in the same grade in elementary school, and we were good, okay-ish friends. I mean, we had mutual friends and all that stuff. We messed around with each other on the playgrounds, but that's just like elementary school kids stuff.
Broke my arm.
Oh yeah, well no, that's not really my fault, and it was your wrist. But then I moved schools. We were strangers after that. But then like you just showed up in the middle of my high school class. You were like, "Yo, are you Hunter?" And I was like, "Holy crap, you look different." Like, I mean, that was just completely coincidental, and I mean, I guess I hung out with you enough to the point I'm stuck with you, and all your loser friends. So, I mean, you got me here doing this podcast. I mean, you must have done something right. I must have liked you somehow. I mean, I'm here, aren't I?
Yeah, my loser friends that you also happen to be very good friends with all of them.
I
Um,
guess that says a lot about me, doesn't it?
what's the end goal for you?
The end goal, I got a few things in mind. Well, I already talked to you about that degree, and truth be told, that's what I really like to do. I mean, if I were to say like some fantasy world where I'd really like to be, I mean, this is still a possibility. It just really depends on how life goes. I'd like to go through special forces and get a PA through there. After that, I could be a pathologist. I mean, that's a very common way most people become pathologists is through special forces and in the army or MARSOC in the Marines. That's one of the biggest things. I would love to do that and work in pathology, and that's a really good career. I think I'd absolutely love and thrive in it. However, I mean, also got a few other options that I'm thinking of. Mainly just that medical degree. I want to get there. We'll really see how or if my thoughts change when I get through basic.
Yeah. Um, Talk a little more about your shooting.
Oh, my shooting. Okay. So, this was a big thing for me when I was young, and a lot of people blame my dad for this, but really it was me who fell in love with it. My dad also does this competition shooting, but he brought me one day because he had to. And I loved it so much to the fact that I would not let him leave the house without bringing me. Um, and then he bought me when I was 7. He bought me this little not 1022, it was a MMP mock-up uh, that was chambered in 22. And I messed around with that on the stages. They had like little courses that you shoot them in, and I shot with the squads in after competitions. And when I was 7, that was like the world to me. I was like, oh, I'm shooting competition with these grown adults. They were all in like their 20s and 30s, and I like they were my idols. I thought they were the best shooters in the world. Then I found out I wasn't being scored, and I got really pissed at my dad. So he bought me an STI Trojan. It's a 1911. It was a beautiful gun. Had a beautiful trigger, and it was just perfect for me at the time. I was around 8 or 9, and I shot that for like a good until I was 13, I believe. Actually, no, I got got a new gun when I was 2019, so that was I'm not even gonna do that math. But yeah, I shot that for a while, and those competitions were big for me. I was going all over the East Coast, so I went to that was Frederick, Maryland. I went up to York. I don't know where Ontolani is, but it's way north Pennsylvania. All the way down to Richmond in Virginia. There's one in Charlottesville. We went to a really nice one in North Carolina and called Carolina Classic. There's the Area 8 matches. Areas are the ways it's broken down into in USPSA. And for the past 3 years, I've been going to the national events that they had down in Alabama. Where else? Down in Talladega. Kind of close to the raceway. That's probably where you heard Talladega from. It's the huge raceway there. Pretty close to there is a huge CMP gun range, and they run the USPSA ranges or matches there. And that was a lot of fun. There's a lot of challenge there. I started shooting open, which is just a big fancy gun, very expensive. And yeah, it's a lot of fun. I completely fell in love with it. We started loading. There's a lot of sacrifices, a lot of money put into this, but this is one of the best hobbies I've had of the many hobbies I do have.
I would like to talk about another hobby as well. One of your more interesting ones, in my opinion. Lego
Wow.
building.
Oh, okay. Is that the question? You just want to know about my Lego building?
Yeah, talk a little bit about that because
Now,
it's not like you just build sets.
yeah, that is fair. I mean, shameless plug. Go to hunter.a.clark on Instagram. You'll see some cool Lego stuff. But you can't blame me. I was 5, and like every 5-year-old, those Lego kits were awesome. They were really fun to build. When I got older, I met did some stuff online and found out that people were just taking apart the sets and building their own thing. So I started doing that, and I thought it was like really interesting. Like, oh, you're making your own thing. It's you're building outside the instructions. It's literally what the Lego Movie was about, dude. And that was big for me. I started buying Legos on my own on Bricklink. You just buy individual parts and all that. And then I started getting better and better. There's conventions I went to. There's so many different techniques, and it's really an art form now for me than anything. It's not really just a toy. I like to build it as I'm seeing an art. Like I'm building a landscape. I'm building these trees, and they're just framed so perfectly that it's just it's the art medium that fits best for me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, what are some interesting Lego builds that you've made?
So I made a lot of military builds. So I've built M4A1 Shermans, the World War II Deuce and a Halves, and then a lot of models to go along with it. So I built Aachen, the Battle of Aachen in World War II. More recently, in 1994, I believe. I built this a while ago, so I don't really remember. But I built the Siege of Sarajevo, which is part of the Yugoslav Wars. I built even more recently, which is currently sitting on my desk unfinished, but I built a lot of World War One Russian stuff, which is a medium that I don't really think is talked about a lot. I also built a lot of Cold War stuff. I built Vietnam mocks galore. I've built Hueys. I've built the Soviet-Afghan War and some Cold War stuff that people haven't heard of, like the Kenyan uprising, the Mau Mau uprising, the Carl Fuchs arrests. I've done, what else have I done? The Aden Wars. I've done all of the Yemen Wars, all of that stuff. I like to touch up on stuff like a little bit of history that isn't really shown. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I think Legos is an interesting platform to display history.
Yeah. Um, you talk about conventions. Is there any specific conventions you've done and want to talk about those?
Brick Fair, Virginia is probably like the biggest game changer. If this stuff even sounds like remotely interesting to you, I recommend going to Brick Fair, Virginia. Happens around August, like early August. So there's so many fun people to be there. There was a lot of people my age the first time I went there, and they they became my friends almost instantly. Like they were really cool people. So I found a lot of fun there. There's a lot of people who have different like almost different medians of Lego building. Like there's people who build mosaics, people who just build vehicles, people who build terrains, people who build massive castles, or very small detailed builds, and you'll hear them talk about it for hours, kind of like what I'm doing right now.
Well, wouldn't say hours right now, but yes,
Oh, but
I
I
can
could.
confirm
Oh, but I
that
could.
he does talk for hours about them. Um, what hobbies do you want to get into in the future? Because I know hobbies are a huge part of people's lives and their choices and what they choose to do.
Oh, I want to do so much. There's so many hobbies I wanted to do, and my dad always told me, okay, but what hobby are you gonna have to get rid of? Because that's how many hobbies I had. Is that like I love mountain biking, I love fishing, I love hiking, I love camping, a lot of outside stuff. So when I'm doing most of that stuff for Lego building or shooting, um, or going outside and drawing, or all sorts of stuff like, not to mention, I just like to chill out and play video games. I can't really do other stuff. So I'm also big into music. I love music. It gets me through most of my days when I'm doing most of these hobbies. I'm listening to music. So I really wanted to get into drums. So I'm hoping when I'm outside of the army or probably on base or something like that, I could somehow mess around with the drum kit, learn all that stuff. Also, I kind of go to the gym. I mean, I'm working out pretty often. However, I'd like to get more into it, get more built, that sort of stuff. I had another one, but it's not coming to me. You'll probably have to go on without it.
Okay. Um, yeah, no, I appreciate you coming on and helping me out. I appreciate you coming on the podcast, but yeah, you definitely have had quite the interesting life, which is why I wanted to have you on here.
I just been here for 17 years, and the best is yet to come,
Exactly.
unless it's cut short.
Well, don't cut it short, but yeah, I appreciate you. Thanks for coming on, and yeah.
No problem, Andrew. It's a pleasure.